is something of a craft beer rush on in Hong Kong right now. Linda Kennedy reports several local breweries are ready to open the spigots.
Think beer is just linked to bellies? Think again. This is the launch of Hong Kong's Craft Beer Association. These guys are the brains behind beers. Importers, distributors, retailers and aspiring brewers. Their aim? To enlighten Hong Kong about craft beer without getting heavy. I'm more of a Pinot Grigio girl, but I put myself up for a half-pint apprenticeship.
Toby, craft beer, normal beer, what is the difference in terms of what's in there?
There's a lot of industrial brewers that put a lot of additives, a lot of adjuncts, so they're adding corn, they're adding rice, that basically adds no flavour, but it produces cheap alcohol. With a craft beer, it's made with a lot more love, it's made with a lot more attention to detail, and they're trying to produce the best possible product they can with the best possible ingredients.
So far so tasty, but also so what? As an economic contributor, it's small beer, isn't it? Actually, in the US last year, the total beer market was worth $99 billion. Craft brewers reached 6.5% volume of the total US market, up from 5.7% the previous year. Same again for Hong Kong? Back to Toby.
There's currently about 2,500 craft breweries in the States, and Hong Kong glaringly has none. There are quite a few in the pipeline in Hong Kong. I think we have room for maybe 5 or 6 breweries in Hong Kong. There's 9 in Singapore, so with a smaller population, there's more going on down there at the moment. There's definitely a hole in the market for it.
And let's be clear-eyed about this, not always a condition associated with beer. A craft brewer, defined by the Brewers Association in the States, is small, independent and traditional, with annual production fewer than 6 million barrels. By that definition, Rohit Dugar is definitely a craft brewer to be. Here he is in Atley Chow overseeing assembly of his new equipment. A New Yorker and former home brewer, he decided to move full-time into the beer business.
Linda, we have a 3-vessel brew house. We have a mash tun over there, a Loyalton and a Whirlpool. It gives us a lot of flexibility to make many different styles of beer, particularly when it comes to mashing, because we are able to experiment with mashing and do many different complicated mash schedules.
Let's keep walking through all these tanks. How does what you've described differ from how beer would be made in an industrial brewery?
Yeah, so there are essentially 2 or 3 key differences. First of all, we don't have, industrial, commercial, computerized equipment which would be programmed to produce the same recipe batch after batch. We are able to innovate and do new things with every single batch.
There's a lot of international beers out there. I imagine that the trick is going to be to use like a local ingredient to make sure that you differentiate yourselves. What's your secret plan?
In the summertime, we're hoping to make a white ale with tangerine peel and local wheat, and also Chinese pipe spices.
And what about any of the other touches that we always associate with China? Are you going to do a green tea beer?
Yeah, what we are thinking of doing is actually a cha soba ale, which is essentially a buckwheat beer with a gentle green tea infusion at the end.
But time for a sobering thought. Pierre Caddery is a brewer who's already tried making craft beer in Hong Kong. T8 Bitter is an online memory now, mainly photos of the brewery on Lantau Island, a victim of too fast expansion. But its brewer has decided to resurrect his Typhoon brand.
I started very small because there was no particular market that I was trying to service. I was trying to build a market, and when my rent was increased, I just couldn't make enough beer to sell to cover my rent, and so I had to shelve my plans in order to come up with a bigger, more commercially viable plan, so that I can actually fulfil the market that I now know is there. The fact that there are more craft brewers in the market actually just builds the culture, so it's synergistic rather than just one person taking all the pie. So I see it as only a good thing because the culture will build.
The drink that has recently dominated in China as a status symbol and investment is, of course, wine.
Could there ever be a time when you might have a mainlander who's willing to take 1,000 RMB for a particularly great craft beer.
There was a mainland guy with a suitcase that was going around buying all the beers and taking them away with him.
So that interest was there.
It's a lot easier to get that great beer that you want, that you've never tried. As long as you can find it, the hardest thing is finding it, but it will never cost you $1,000.
But there is one way beer could even usurp wine as a flavoursome companion to your dinner. To learn more, I head to one of Hong Kong's top importers of craft beer.
Beer pairings with food. It's going to be a big thing. Guide me through it.
First up, a beer that would go with a starter course.
It's very light, isn't it? It almost looks like lemonade. And smells very fresh, very citrusy.
Yeah, it's got that citrus kind of zingy notes to it.
And we're using wine glasses. Is that the right thing for a beer tasting?
Absolutely. Definitely something to have earlier in the meal, perhaps with fish or seafood to bring out the sweetness, or some fresh cheese as well.
Let's move on to a main course. If there's a beer to be paired with a kind of heavy main section of the meal, what would you suggest?
I'd suggest something like an IPA, so it definitely helps with something that's fattier as far as the meal is concerned, or even curry, which is spicier and creamier.
Is there a beer equivalent of doing something dreadful like serving red wine with fish?
Yeah, I wouldn't serve this with, I don't know, chocolate cake or something.
We move on to a dessert beer. Danny suggests a stout, although the first description isn't promising.
It's almost like engine oil, very viscous.
It is so dark. Oh, wow, here goes. All right, what kind of pudding would that go with?
It's as you can see, and it's got some sweet notes to it, but it's also got a bit of bitter note, nutty note at the back as well. So definitely goes with vanilla ice cream. What we normally suggest is drink the beer to a certain extent when you've got 1/5 of the bottle left, and then drizzle around some vanilla ice cream. Just lovely to pair that with.
Okay.
Danny and I continue to enjoy our dessert beer. And if that's a phrase we're all using easily in a year or two, craft brewing will surely have brought economic cheers to Hong Kong.
Coming up after the break, prescriptions for Hong Kong's medical industry. Stay with us.